Welcome to Ranting and Raving. This is another episode. I'm once again joined by Chris Connor, which of course means we're going to talk some basketball here. We're going to talk a little bit of Pels ball, one player in particular, but this whole conversation actually got triggered because a certain Frenchman with a penchant for poor decision making decided to say that he would lock down pretty much the most dominant force in the history of this game. And physics says nay, nay. So we're going to talk about really kind of two different topics, and we're going to do it all in one episode here. So we're going to start just kind of talking about the great big men of the past and what it really means to be a big man in the NBA, because it's not just being tall. And then, towards the end, we're also going to talk about the modern NBA and why it's so ridiculous. And this is national media guys, former players talk about, the game is changing. The big men are gone. Yeah, not so much. What it really is there's just not that many human beings with bear DNA in them that are 7 feet tall and agile. There's a lot of tall people out there, and most of them look like ATSTs from Star Wars, which are those two little two-legged things that fall over the second you blow on them and got beat by a bunch of koalas. Most giant human beings look like that. Not like Hakeem, who looked like a 7-foot-tall ballet dancer on the floor. And I actually want to start with him, Chris. So, we're around the same age. I think you're a little bit younger than me, which makes me feel old. But both of us are basketball junkies. So I know you've watched Hakeem and a lot of the guys we're going to talk about today. To me, Hakeem is the greatest. He's the second greatest center of all time.
Mm-hmm.
Kareem is number one. Like his numbers, his longevity, his game itself. We'll talk about all that. But Hakeem to me is the second greatest center ever. He's the greatest defensive player that's ever played the game. And he's edging out Rodman, but to me he does edge out Rodman.
Okay.
So I kind of want to start with him since this whole thing came from Rudy Gobert opening his big mouth. What made Hakeem so great? We can talk offense or defense first, and what is so different between Hakeem's level of greatness and a guy like Gobert?
So I think, and the game was different. The time was different, right? The big men dominated the game, right? Games, game plans went through centers, right? Pretty much up and down we talk about now how almost, every team, there's so many different talented guards, right? They may not all be of the same class, but every night there's gonna be, another point guard that you gotta deal with one way or another. That's just, a shooting guard. Well, that's kind of how it was, in 80s and the 90s when it came to big men. Everybody was looking. I mean, even, guys, and I'm missing. I'm trying to remember this man's name. He played for Cleveland, and now he does NASCAR work now. But he was a really good center. But I don't remember his name.
I'm not remembering anything, but I know who you're talking about.
Point being is just that's where the game was. Even lower, mid-tier centers, matter, right? It's a reason that we talk about guys like, even the fact that we can have a conversation about Bill Laimbeer.
But don't hate on Laimbeer.
No,
he was one of the first stretch bigs.
Yes. But like that tier that we're talking about, like he wasn't close to Ewing or
no. He was an alpha role player. He was he was an alpha. He was a great. Bill Laimbeer was a really, really good player.
Yeah.
People talk about the dirty stuff and don't really recognize like what a great player Bill Laimbeer was, but that's a role player. Patrick Ewing was a stud.
Every team had one. And, there's a lot of things I think that that went well for Hakeem. I mean, he comes into the league and he's playing with Ralph Sampson. And I mean, they end up building, one of the better and more unique 4 and 5 tandems, right? They're both centers, but you gotta play them because of what you invested into them and because of the talents that are
Yeah.
there. I think they end up making the NBA Finals. They lose, of course, that around that time. I think
Yep.
maybe to the Celtics. I don't remember off the top of my head, but um, I think that helped Hakeem, and then he had to work from there. Um, he worked his ass off. He worked on the fundamentals on both sides of the floor.
Yep.
One of the smartest players I think at that size that you really have ever seen. Hell of an athlete. He moved like a dancing bear. So that helped as well. Quick. Doesn't get enough credit for the athlete that he was.
I've seen so many former players talk about how strong and like people like Hakeem was only 6'10". He wasn't like 7'2" like Shaq.
Right.
He was 6'10". I'd say only 6'10". The NBA, the only place in the world you could say that. But yeah, you watch some of his highlights and he's so quick. It's like in a way it's like watching Muhammad Ali. You go back and watch Muhammad Ali for a heavyweight boxer and the way he moved. Big people are not supposed to do that.
Correct.
And like to me, that's what made Hakeem special was he had the ability to do that. And then, like you said, he put so much time and effort into mastering his fundamentals and developing his footwork that it's that old adage, skilled little man beats unskilled, sloppy big man, but skilled big man beats everybody.
Beats everybody, right? Beats everybody. And the thing about it, I look at him. The measurements were there, the durability was there. He kept himself in great shape. He was available for fourth quarters. He had so many different ways to beat you: left block, right block, left shoulder, right shoulder,
Mid range,
which mid range, which turns into the quote unquote dream shake because you had to respect either hand he went to. But the thing that sticks out to Akeem is that no one disrespects Akeem. Nobody disrespects Akeem.
not even Shaq. And
No,
Shaq
exactly.
disrespects everybody.
Exactly. And the reason why is because Hakeem dominated the best centers of all time. He dominated many of the best centers of all time. There's a top 10 list, and he went through a gauntlet of them, right? Ewing, Robinson, Shaq. Like, you got guys that and that's before even, and that's, we're talking, he had to go against, here and there, Parishes of the world, McHale, doing late 80s. Hakeem had an elite run of guys that he had to go against. But I think what sticks out to me is that in the games that mattered the most against the best, later Alonzo Mourning and company, he always dominated, but no one disrespects him. I hear all the time about, I mean, even the fact that people can even mention that they'll do that. Shaq's name every few years is always brought up, right? Whether it's by Draymond, the Draymond conversation, the Rudy Gobert conversation, and we both are in agreement that they're completely out of their mind. But no one will ever bring that. No one will ever step to Akeem that way. And I just find that, I find that hilarious because people know who he was. He dominated some of the great ones. The great ones don't disrespect him. And to me, depending on where you rank him, I think he's your favorite big man's favorite big man.
I love the way you put that.
Yeah.
And if he's not your favorite big man's favorite big man, your favorite big man needs to get on them tapes and start watching.
Yeah.
Because that's the learning tree right there.
Yeah.
I love the way you put that in. And real quick, because you mentioned one of the, there's a long list of guys to talk about, but one of the other guys on the list, maybe the most forgotten guy of that 90s era as far as great big men, is the Admiral. Like, David Robinson does not get talked about the way people talk about Ewing and the way they talk about Hakeem and the way they talk about Shaq, and like as like the top echelon of that era of big men. And it's not that Robinson gets completely forgotten, but he doesn't get talked about the same way as those guys. And what's funny to me is a big part of that is actually it's Hakeem's fault. Because one of my I love petty in sports, like good petty, not bad petty. I don't like Jay Crowder dirty bullshit, but like good petty is part of what makes sports fun. And Hakeem, while he's known as like one of the nicest human beings ever, was big time petty. So if anybody doesn't know, this is one of the great FU moments in sports history. David Robinson beat out Hakeem for the MVP in the regular season. And they played each other in the first round of the playoffs. And Hakeem didn't beat David Robinson. Hakeem baptized David. David Robinson was an elite defensive player. Like, we're going to talk about modern versus like historical bigs, towards the end of this. But like a guy like Rudy Gobert, who, by the way, not on the same level of defender as a guy like Dwight Howard was in his prime, and like, but a very good defensive big man. David Robinson was a better defender than Rudy Gobert. Better athlete, stronger, better rebounder, but way better offensive player. Like comparing them in players is absurd. That's like, I don't know. It's like comparing Carlos Arroyo to Isaiah Thomas, the real one. Like, that's not fair. As a good player, this is an all-time. But his defensive ability was really part of his calling card. And Hakeem abused that man. And so like that's why I wanted to start with him. He's my favorite big ever. He's the guy from an athletic profile. Just to give, again, modern fans, if you're watching this and you don't really know all these old guys we're talking about. Okay, imagine Anthony Davis's athleticism and ability. But if it was with Joel Embiid's level of petty and Kobe's footwork. And I'm literally saying Kobe's footwork because the guy Kobe went to learn that footwork was Hakeem. That's what Hakeem was. That level of ability to switch out on the perimeter, to erase people on the interior, to block shots, to rebound, to score, to dominate in absolutely every facet of the game. That's who Hakeem was. And what I think happens is, because there's one other guy from that era that's the reason why this narrative gets started, and you mentioned him a second ago, he does get disrespected a lot, is what I think happens is in the modern NBA, we act like there are no great big men. Like, the three-pointers and the guard play, the big men, you can't build around a big man anymore. And it's just flat out not true, which, again, we'll talk about at the end. But on the opposite side of the spectrum, Hakeem, great athlete, incredible defender, but the pinnacle of skill. And then in the same era, an even freakier athlete, because we're going to talk about Orlando Shaq before we talk about LA Shaq, because there are three different Shaqs. There's Orlando Shaq, there's LA Shaq, and there's fat old Shaq. That happened around the Cleveland era and continued through the end of his career. Once his knees started going, and that's what a lot of people, not necessarily our age, but especially younger, they remember Shaq more for being a petty guy on TV than they really remember what an absurd player he was. That's the only way I can rationalize Rudy saying he would shut down Shaq. So before we talk about the overall dominance of the player, do you want to remind people of what Orlando Shaq was like?
He was unlike anything I don't think anybody had ever seen. Probably when we're talking athletes at that position.
It's a one of one.
Yeah.
Well, okay, one of two. Wilt.
Yeah, Wilt.
Wilt was an Olympic qualifying track and field guy, I think. I remember right.
But Shaq had a level of power that I can't say even to this day, even Orlando Shaq, I don't think I've seen that level of just overall power and control ever. It was never out of control power. There was never, you just had to deal with it. And we can get into one of the unfortunate things about Shaq that people forget that how skilled he was as well, right?
Yeah.
A very, very good
Used to
passer,
run the break
run the break.
and get assists
Yeah.
at 7'2", 285,
You hadn't seen a guy
315,
like
something in
that.
that range.
You hadn't seen a guy like that in Orlando. Orlando Shaq physically in immaculate shape, running the floor. And it just LA Shaq's my favorite, but Orlando Shaq is probably the most fun. That's when he seemed just to have, he was having some of the most fun of his life. Um, he was young, he was charismatic. I mean, first of all, we hadn't seen really a star like that, especially at that position, right? Because remember,
You remember the old
big men
quote,
didn't
right?
sell shoes.
Big men don't sell was the quote. That's what made Shaq mad.
Yeah, big men don't sell shoes. Okay, okay. He sold shoes. He
We're gonna make a
became,
platinum album.
yeah, made a platinum album. Made a everybody wanted to be like Shaq. Shaq made money. Like to me, I compare what Shaq did and what Dion did in football in regards to,
I
remember
like
when
that
Dion
comparison.
came up and people said that, cornerbacks don't make money. You're not gonna make money being a cornerback. Okay. He creates prime time and changes the entire landscape. One of the most entertaining things, arguably the most entertaining athlete that you've ever seen. Crosses over
Top
into
three.
into other areas, Dion could have did whatever he wanted to.
Anything.
And he did whatever he wanted to. Having MC Hammer on the sideline. I mean, it's crazy. But with Shaq, it was similar to me. He broke a mold and he changed the way I think that a lot of people saw athletes and saw big men at the same time. It didn't flourish into winning in Orlando, but that part of him was very important.
It not winning it all, but like let's not forget, like these guys in Orlando, he made the finals.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I know the archives have been burned. It's been banned. We're not allowed to talk about it. It never happened. But Jordan actually did lose a playoff series after they drafted him help in Scottie Pippen, and it was against Shaq and Penny.
Yeah, yeah. Now
Like, they were scary.
They were Shaq and Penny, Nick Anderson, Dennis Scott, like that. They were definitely fearsome. I mean, look, like they young teams do what young teams do, right? They went into that final series against Houston very confident. And I think in game one, they were up 20 points.
Yep.
Houston makes a big comeback. That's the Kenny Smith game, right? That's the Kenny Smith game. Houston ends up winning, and after that comeback, Orlando's completely finished. There's nothing else they can do.
And it's all Orlando's fault. We got to listen to Kenny Smith act like he was a great player for all of time.
Yeah.
My era, my generation.
Yeah.
Dude, like, you just need to not. Kenny Smith might be the greatest sayer of stupid shit of former athletes ever.
You sure you want to die on that hill?
I didn't say he is. I said he might be. It might be a long list, but he's in tier 1 on the list.
Herschel Walker would like to have a conversation right now.
Okay. Let me correct that. Kenny Smith is a great of saying dumb shit about sports.
Oh yeah.
Herschel Walker is like a whole different like. I don't know what drugs he found.
We don't have to go ahead, but
I don't know what barbell he dropped on his head, but whatever he did, no one else should do it.
Oh man.
That guy's a fucking moron. He's the Shaq of stupid people. Dominant. But so we had Orlando Shaq, and you just had this freaky athlete. I love the Dion comparison. And again, freaky athlete. Like, you're not supposed to do that. Yeah, but I can.
But I can't.
Dion, Shaq, Roy Jones. Like, there's only a few
Ooh.
guys who did everything wrong and were so great that it was right.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
you only can get away like, and they go, oh, well, he had bad technique. No, you don't understand. That's true greatness. It wasn't wrong for him. That's what made them great. They weren't playing bad. They were doing bad things, and their greatness made them good things.
Yeah.
Kobe's shot selection. Any other player with Kobe's shot selection would be 15th man and out of the league in 2 years. But
Mm-hmm.
when Kobe did it and it went in, coach does this. Like, there's just certain guys that can do that. And then he goes to LA and he gets a little bigger and he gets a little bigger. And I'm not doing the big fat motion, I'm doing the big shoulders motion.
Yeah.
Because
Jesus.
what he became, and especially at the end with the three-peat version of Shaq, and he was still a great athlete. Like, Shaq's one of the best passing bigs out of the elbow. Like, people
Correct.
just completely forget that because one of the greatest highlight clips a big man has ever had, LA Shaq dunks on a dude, nut thrusts off the damn rim, and then tosses him into the front row because Shaq was an asshole.
Poor
Um,
Chris Dudley.
I feel bad for him, but it's one of my absolute favorite plays of all time.
Because like you know what's funny about that?
He
Chris
was a
Dudley like
dick.
wanted to fight, but it's like, bro, you don't. And
You
Shaq
don't.
was a bully sometimes. It's
Oh, he
like,
was.
he knew no
No,
one wanted to fight him,
yeah.
but you can't just let somebody just,
And
you know what I
credit,
mean?
Shaq owns it. Like, he knows that's who he was. Now this is why I don't always like Shaq as an analyst, because Shaq wants every big man to be like him. Like, just go out there and dominate.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, Shaq, it ain't a light switch for everybody. Like, one of the
Oh
famous
man.
Shaq stories is he was playing on his birthday, and they were playing the Clippers, and he was playing okay, and then he, according to Shaq, and Shaq is known for making up stories, made up the story that David Robinson never signed something for him and didn't admit it was a whole bunch of bullshit until he was
Yeah.
long retired,
Hmm.
simply as a way to get extra motivation. Like, Shaq was one of those supreme petty people, but said like he saw Kareem on the sideline giving the Clippers advice, and it made him mad. And then he goes out and I think he scored like, what was it, like 58, 60,
62 on
61,
his
something like
birthday.
that.
Yeah.
And as Shaq said, like, Phil pulled him out in the game just because he didn't want him to break, to score more than Mike. Which I mean, it was probably because it's like once Shaq flipped that switch, like, the game was over. Like,
Yep.
people don't understand. This was probably a 320-pound human with a low, like, probably about an 8% body fat, and to understand, like, 8% at that size is you're shredded. Like, go look at professional, like, not professional bodybuilders, professional weightlifters. They look fat, they're not fat. They have to maintain a certain amount for their body to be able to operate, but it's all muscle. Shaq in his prime, before he started getting like really out of shape, by the time the playoffs came around, that was a gigantic, athletic, dominant human being. And it's like, oh, well, all he did was dunk. Well, no, he actually had moves. That's what part of what made him so terrifying is
Hmm.
Shaq could get it at the mid post or off the elbow extended, could jab step you, drop step, spin, reverse back the other way, and then dunk on you. Shaq could do Hakeem shit. He didn't do it as well as Hakeem. He didn't do it as frequently, but that frame,
He didn't
he
need
could
to.
do that.
Yeah,
It's
he didn't need
he's the
to.
freakiest athlete we've ever seen.
Yeah, I'm not mad at that. You weren't supposed to be able to do it at that, at that size with that. Just I mean, again, like with that amount of power and that amount of control, like it wasn't reckless. And you mentioned other parts of his game, like centers would try to, with defenses would try to push him further out. So what does Shaq do? He gets a fadeaway jump hook, right? He gets in which he was able to finish pretty much with either hand.
Should have shot
That
that from the
turns
free
into
throw.
yeah. Well,
He probably would have shot a better percentage.
I mean, he changes the game so much to where either teams have to start being creative and say, all right, we just gotta we'd rather him, we'd rather give him an opportunity at free points than we would sit here and have to deal with what we know is an automatic bucket.
Oh yeah.
It's like Barry Bonds coming up to plate. You know what? It's like, it's very
Walk him.
hard to hit a home run. Just walk him. just walk him.
Free base.
Just give it to him. Bases loaded. We'll take the run. Go ahead. Walk him.
I'd rather have 1 than 4.
but that's how dominant Shaq was. I mean, it's just, and it really didn't matter who was there. We're talking some of the best. Once he got to where he was, LA Shaq, Hakeem would have had problems.
I mean, Hakeem had problems with Orlando Shaq.
Yeah.
Hakeem won the matchup, but it was close.
Yeah.
The greatest defender ever, folks. Ever. And young pup. This is like 07 LeBron. There's your comparison. Like starting to ascend, this player is going to be a problem, but is not the dominant force yet.
Yeah.
Young pup Shaq. And him and Hakeem were a wash. It had
a motor. And that's the thing. He had a motor. Like Shaq's motor may be off the floor, and where his mind was in regards to diet, and I'm gonna get ready when when I want to get ready, and
play his way into shape.
Free throws, whatever, But we're talking on the floor. There was a motor defensively. There was a motor rebounding. There was a motor attacking the offensive glass.
7th all time in blocks, something like that.
Yes, fighting for second and third chance opportunities. It's one of those things. It's one of those reasons that you get it. I get excited about watching a guy like Zion play, because Zion isn't 7 feet, but I see so many of those Shaq-like sequences to where it's like you just can't do shit about that.
Nope.
There's just nothing you can do.
Well, and let's actually, and I know, especially for people watching this, like we could literally spend 3 hours just talking about the great big men. We didn't really talk much about Patrick Ewing. We didn't get into David Robinson a ton, but we're not trying to make this a 3-hour show. Yeah. Although I've been known to talk that long just to a wall before, so that wouldn't surprise anybody. But let's actually use that as a great time to segue into the modern game. So let's kind of start with Zion.
Yeah.
When I saw Zion in college, I said, and one of these I'm thankfully probably going to be proven wrong on, and I'm happy about that because my concern was health, and I'm hoping that he's going to be okay. But I had said that my worry was that RJ Barrett was going to have a better pro career than Zion, partially because I really liked RJ's development potential. I didn't know the poor guy was going to end up a Nick, and then with Tibbs, I'm so sorry, kid. But I think he's long term a very interesting prospect. But the question I always had with Zion but can he stay on the court? Because if he can, and people who only know these guys from the TNT TV show don't understand what a compliment this comparison is. Because it's a top 4 guy at his position and a top 2 guy at his position in NBA history. Charles Barkley's game with Shaq's gifts in a 6'8" to 6'10" rather than a 7'2" frame. But that's who Zion is. He's a unique player. He has Shaq's and Chuck were both very good passers. He has that ability to be a primary creator as a big, but be a true big man. And when we say big man, it's not just being wide or tall or both. It's a style of play. Like Dirk was, don't get it twisted. Dirk was a bad man. Dirk was 7 feet tall. Dirk wasn't a big man. Dirk was a wing extended. KD is a wing extended. Even LeBron, who when he wants to be, can be a big man, is a power wing.
Yeah, I like that.
Giannis is a big man. Embiid is a big man. Zion is a big man. Jokic, even though he does a lot on the perimeter, is a big man. And those are the 4 guys we're going to talk about for the modern era. We're going to start with Zion. This idea, and again, this is mostly sports media, but it's some fans too that talk about the big man is dead. No. early to mid 2000s, there was one human that size with that level of talent, and that was Dwight Howard. And that's what made us say the big man is dead. But it's not. We just didn't have any humans that size with that amount of talent who happened to make the league during that stretch of time. There are dominant players in today's game. And the only one that we're going to talk about is Zion, who has an asterisk. And the asterisk isn't that whether or not he's dominant, it's can he stay on the court consistently? Because we saw last year. Zion, again, Mr. I would shut down Shaq. Go watch Zion play Rudy Gobert.
That's right.
They collide in midair, and Rudy hits the stanchion, and Zion gets an and one.
You know, that's really interesting what you said about the mid 2000s, Brian, because I think that makes me think and remember all of the like how the game changed just from the perspective that there were so many different drafts that teams wanted. They wanted the next big man. They started to see these guys get a little bit more athletic. So you see a lot of undeveloped, raw big men drafted. You know, Tyson Chandler was among that. Yep. Was among that group, right? You know, guys from high school, Eddie Curry,
JaVale.
Right, JaVale was another one of those kind of guys. But I mean, Stromile, Swift, Tyrese Thomas, like there's
the great what if.
Greg Oden, at least with Greg Oden, he was way more polished, I think.
Well, that's why I said he was the great what if. Yeah. If he didn't get hurt, he would have been what Embiid is now. Different player, different player. But as far as being that guy that the old school fans can look at and go, that's my era.
Yeah.
Big men still exist.
Yeah.
Yeah. He had that kind of talent. He was a guy that was going to be able to go get you 25 a night, get you 10 boards, play on the defense, and move.
I have a theory for you. You know who I think broke the big man position for a period of time?
Who?
Kevin Garnett.
I love that you brought him up.
Kevin Garnett being drafted out of high school so young and working as quick as he did in the style of play in which he played, I think it fucked up a lot because everybody tried to replicate that after that. After him, whichever draft that was, everybody was trying to draft somebody like that, and you simply couldn't. You simply couldn't. Because think about Jermaine O'Neal, right? Jermaine O'Neal was drafted. It took Jermaine, 3-4 years before he got to Indiana and he really blossomed. But he was important. Like, it took a certain circumstance, him being in Portland, playing behind Rashid and those guys. And, versus if he would have been in Cleveland.
Rare exceptions. Bigs and this has always been the case.
Yeah.
Bigs in the NBA, except for the Pantheon guys. The Pantheon guys, look, you could see it in their first year. Oh, he's going to be a problem. But other than the Pantheon players, as far as big men, it's a lot like tight end in the NFL. It takes them 2 or 3 years. They have to grow into their body. They have to learn to play. And the NBA game is so much faster than college. It's not just the athletes. It's the pace of play, how quickly they make decisions, how quickly lanes close down, the double comes, like especially with modern defenses and how much movement there is. Guys have to go through. I love that you brought that up. By the way, one guy, he's not on the 4 guys we're going to talk about, but I think if we did this in 2 years, he will be. Evan Mobley's going to be a fucking problem.
Yes.
I love that kid's game so much.
He has so many.
He's a KG clone. He really, really is a KG clone.
I see young AD in him too, man.
I
see a lot of different things in him, man.
Yeah, he's that kid's going to be special.
Yeah.
But I love that KG absolutely did help break. Other than there just weren't that many talented giant humans. Like KG is an archetype, and teams not understanding that it's not normal. Like Tracy McGrady, Kevin Garnett, and LeBron James had teams thinking you can grab kids out of high school and they're NBA ready. And they stopped taking them out of high school, partially because the NCAA was like, yo, really, y'all are fucking up our money here. But it was also because a lot of those straight from high school kids that they drafted really high and gave tens of millions of dollars guaranteed to, they never worked out because they weren't ready for the league, not just mentally, physically. At 18, you're not supposed to be ready to go against giant freak athlete humans.
Yeah.
Especially when you're big, because the hardest thing as a big guy is movement. But again, back to Zion. What obviously I watch the league. I don't watch Zion as close as you do. You cover the team, Mr. Boot Crew. But what do you think is the crazier freak thing about Zion? His ability as a passer, and I don't just mean the physical touch to be able to pass, but actually reading and the decision making as young as he is, but being able to make all those reads as a big. Do you think that is freakier, or the motor that he plays with?
Man, because he's just a freak, right? Just completely. Like, there's so many different things that just come natural to him, like the ability to be able to react. There's a quick twitch. He's skilled as a passer, and he's worked on those things. But some of the passes that he makes, it's like you could look at that and say, you do not practice that. You just pulled that out right now, and it worked, right? But I think the IQ is there, the ability to react, see what's happening from just offensively. For him to be able to see that, it's freakish, but I mean, to me, man, I think the most freakish thing about Zion is all of the different all-world athletes at different positions and frames, heights, and weights that you can compare him to. Like, you mentioned Shaq and you mentioned Barkley, but I watch him and I see those two, but I also see Sean Marion's second jump off of rebounds. I see
Kemp's explosiveness.
Yes. Yep, definitely Sean Kemp. I see when he's in the air and he's forced to change his shot, like that, like the torque that he carries in air. I see young Derrick Rose. Like, he has some weird shit with him that just should not be possible.
Just started throwing talent in the blender and
because it's not just strong. It's not just strong.
It's not.
He will, at 300 pounds, even when meeting another human in air, he'll contort his body to find a way to get a shot off in a certain angle to make it work. It's not all underhand. It's not all, and that's outside. And that's outside of that aspect. The fact that he can finish with each hand, the touch, similar to Shaq, control power. That's it. I didn't watch enough of Zion to where I was like, damn, this man's gonna get a lot of offensive fouls. And then you watch him, it's like, no. Not only are people going to get out of the way because no one wants to take that. If you do get in the way,
that's an angry Coke machine.
Yeah. If you do get in the way, he, without a Euro step, he will find a way to not always have to take the body contact and go straight up with you.
Absolutely. By the way, really quick aside, but I've just got to get this off my chest. If like the two worst players to ever impact youth sports, they're incredible players, but the two worst players to ever impact youth sports are Kobe Bryant and Steph Curry.
Yeah.
Without question. Because kids watch it. Oh yeah, I could do that. No, you can't. You can stop it. But the worst thing to ever happen to pickup games is the Euro step. I am so tired of stupid motherfuckers in transition doing a damn Euro step for no reason and blowing a layup. The point of a Euro step is to get around a defender. You're not a breakaway, you jackass. I said get off my damn chest. It's so fucking stupid. Just doing shit for no reason, which Zion doesn't do, by the way.
No.
But I love that you said he's not just power, because I think a lot of people see that he's just got that big bull body, like just a fucking mastodon of a human being. Like I made the grimace jokes because I thought they were funny, but like you really when you see Zion and he's in playing shape, like he's a shredded human being. He's not chunky. And he's a smooth, fluid athlete, but he's not just a power player. Like players in the league have talked for years. Steven Adams is considered the strongest guy in the league. And Steven Adams has that freakish, like Viking power where like he just grabs people. And you'd see people go, oh no, no. Like even like top tier trash talkers like Jimmy Butler, like, no, that dude is fucking strong. No. Zion has great power, but it's what makes Steven Adams not a dominant big man. Well, it's not just power. It's skill, technique, fluidity, footwork, vision, touch. It's you can have one thing and be a good big man. There's still lots of good big men in the league. Again, we brought up JaVale, and people think JaVale is still the the Shaq and a Fool guy. JaVale's got 3 rings and was a meaningful contributor on all of those championships.
Yep.
But it's the entire spectrum of talent that makes Zion so crazy. I think Zion is from a gifts perspective, because we're going to transition to another guy. From a pure gifts perspective, I think Zion is the second freakiest player in the NBA. I think overall end to end, LeBron's the best athlete we've ever seen. Like just if you look top to bottom from the toolkit, but when you're talking freakish, Shaq, Zion, LeBron, like it's a short list of guys where you're just like that doesn't like among these godlike human beings, that person still doesn't make sense. To a degree, honestly, Vince Carter probably belongs on the list just for the dunk of death. But Giannis, when Giannis is a big man, and Giannis ascended as a player when he realized that. And what I like earlier is you brought up the KG, and I'm not saying that Giannis thought he was KG, but I'm bringing up what you mentioned that because I think this is what hurt Giannis early in his career. Came in smaller than he is now, but came into the league as a wing. And they were like, okay, he can kind of dribble a little bit, he can pass a little bit, maybe we can develop, he can be in the LeBron archetype. And they kept trying to put him in the LeBron archetype. And he didn't have that handle, and he didn't have that jump shot. Even young career LeBron had a better jump shot. He wasn't that player. But when they really doubled down and Giannis doubled down and went, I'll still bring the ball up sometimes because I can. And me in transition is horrifying because I can get to the rim in 2 dribbles. And like that's actually not hyperbolic. He literally gets to the rim in 2 dribbles.
It's true.
It's fucking absurd.
It's true.
Without traveling. Not that he never travels, he just can do it without traveling. But when he realized, and you really saw this over the last couple of years, if elbowing in, I'm getting the ball, the possession is over. And being a power player, and not just dunks, finishes around the rims, hooks, like he started to really develop that big man game. But developing it on the offensive and the defensive side, which is like he's the best player in the world right now. Like there's no question. It's not close to me, honestly, because there are actually 2 ends of the floor. I know people forget about that.
Yeah.
And just by the way, I actually think Zion can develop a lot in that direction too. Like people make him out like and I love Kevin Love, but like people act like he's Kevin Love on defense, who also gets maligned on defense. He actually became a pretty good defender in Cleveland. Not a great defender, but a pretty good defender. But Giannis is in an entirely different strat. Like he is in a completely different way in the Hakeem archetype of best defender on the planet.
Yeah.
And can give you 40 anytime he decides he wants to do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's in a completely different way. But there's pretty much the same element of there's really not a lot you can do about it. Like you can have a choice in how efficient you can try to make him with it to a degree. And you can try to hope to get him in foul trouble. But if he decides I'm having 40 and 15 tonight, you're probably just going to be along for the ride. And in many cases, literally along for the ride. the guy that I think is the most interesting as far as this conversation of, obviously we've talked about this for 45 minutes now. The big man ain't dead. Like, that's a
Right.
stupid narrative. But the guy that I think is the most interesting in today's game compared to the old school. And by the way, again, if anybody's watching this, which I doubt they would be, but if anyone's watching this, we're like, why are they talking about Karl Anthony Towns? You know why we're not talking about Karl Anthony Towns. You don't need to answer that. I don't need to answer that question. Chris doesn't need to answer that question. You know who needs to answer that question? Karl Anthony Towns needs to answer that question because he's the reason we're not talking about Karl Anthony Towns. But Embiid, he's a tremendous defender. He can guard out on the perimeter. Like, he's not a guy like Gobert where you get him in the playoffs and you go small and you get him out in space and it's like you might as well play the yakety sax clown music because there's gonna be some funny clips. Like, right. Embiid goes, that's nice. I'm still here and I'm just gonna swat that into the 8th row.
Mm-hmm.
But on offense, he really is that fusion of new school, old school. You get him on the block and he can dominate.
Perfect fusion.
But his mid-range game, like, I don't know if have you seen the mashups where they actually have done like footwork, like look comparison stuff? He looks like someone took a bike pump to Kobe. Just
I've seen that. Yeah.
Like, when he's at the elbow specifically, you can tell he watched Kobe and went, I think I can do that. And I'm 7'1", 7'2" There's nothing they can do to guard it. So I'm gonna go do that. Can we just get this man a good teammate that shows up in the playoffs, please?
He's incredible, man. He really is. He really is incredible. I mean, he came back with a broken face, and he had another I think a fractured thumb in game 3 against Miami.
Torn ligament in his shooting hand.
Yeah, there you go. Comes back and plays really well.
Yeah. Was giving Bam the business, and Bam's a really, really good player.
And Bam in Embiid's absence, Bam was playing some of his best basketball of that series. I know he finally had a really good game in, I think, game 4, game 5, whatever it was.
I think it was game 5.
Yeah, but and then Joel comes back and that's there.
You're right.
Yeah. Joel comes back and all of it's there. They win game 3. They end up winning game 4. But I mean, he's really, my favorite thing about Embiid is that he is the opposite of Karl Anthony Towns. Is that Karl has, in my opinion, just as many athletic gifts that Joel has. He may have more. But the mentality is different. What each of them want to do, how they attack the game is different. And Joel can back up a lot of the things in which he ends up saying and says all the trolling, he backs it up. Physical offensively.
He's the most Shaq-like player.
Yeah.
Since Shaq. Now, different games to a degree, but that mentality, the pettiness, the getting in your head, but backing it up on the court and dominating people.
And you know what I like? He doesn't fall in love with threes.
No.
He'll take a few. And there'll be nights in which he hits, maybe 3 or 4. He'll have it going, but he developed his shot enough to be a decent to good 3-point shooter, but a guy that does not have to sit out there and fall in love with it and shoot.
He's a 3-level scorer, but he'll go wherever he's going to dominate.
Yeah, he knows exactly where his money is. It's the same thing. It's what I'm still loving about DeMar DeRozan. It's what I loved about Brandon Ingram this year. Yep. I mean, you don't have to be who you were compared to coming in, right? No. When DeRozan came into the league, about Kobe, right? Vince, someone of that ilk. That's you continue to want to kind of create those guys. Which is crazy
because Vince shot 40% from 3 in college, and like the greatest dunker of all time. I'm not listening to, like, we could have that's probably its own show, but
yeah,
at the end of it, we're going to decide that Vince Carter is the greatest dunker of all time.
No matter, even if I want to argue with you just to argue, I can't win.
It's like he hurdled a 7-footer in a game.
Yeah,
he did dunk contest dunks in game. It's over.
Yeah, I would try to argue. Yeah, no, I mean, but
But
You
yeah,
know, same with BI, right? Everybody, okay, you're tall, you're
you're lanky,
lanky.
you don't look like you can bench
KD,
past 150. KD.
yeah, Kevin Durant, 100%. No, man, it doesn't work that way. So, but I love that Embiid stuck with and again, problem with Cat. Bro, why are you taking 10 threes in the game? I know you can shoot them. Your best asset to your team, no matter how much the game's changed, man, over time, football, but a running game helps.
Yep.
Being able to slow down the game and dominate a game, getting other guys in foul trouble helps.
Absolutely. And you know how the Warriors beat the Mavericks so badly? And it's actually a big part of how the Mavericks beat the Suns. Fucking offensive rebounds.
Shout out to Kevon Looney.
Large people who understand how to box out. I know it's a lost art, people, but it's not just for YMCA leagues, as it turns out. Large humans who box out properly gain extra possessions, and that doesn't just win games, it wins series and it wins championships.
Jackson Hayes, please listen to that.
So I know you're we're coming right up at the end of your time here. The last guy I just want to take a couple quick minutes to talk about because he does get his flowers. He's won 2 MVPs, but he gets maligned for that, and I do want to give him his props because I think the best player in the league is Giannis, and Giannis is a big, so the best big in the league is Giannis, and I'm positive Embiid is a better overall player than Nikola Jokic.
I feel that way.
But earlier we talked about Hall of Famer, 2-time champion, great player, David Robinson, gets forgotten because of what Hakeem did to him and because of like even Ewing as a solo act in New York. Like David Robinson didn't win till he got Tim Duncan, who's the greatest power forward of all time. So he gets overshadowed even though he was a tremendous player. And to me, they're not in any way the same player. Clearly, Jokic ain't on the same workout program that the Admiral was, or the same genetic lottery, or any of it. But as far as from a respect standpoint, from a narrative standpoint, I do see if this era of big men, because I think we are in the middle of another era of big men, just like the 90s. Big men are going to dominate this league. And look, in the late 80s, early 90s, one little man dominated the league, Isaiah Thomas. In this era, one little man dominates the league. It's Steph Curry.
Mm-hmm.
And every other team that's been great has a dude that's 6'10" or above that's a dominant force. I think that Jokic, when we're going to take the long-term view, he's won 2 MVPs. I don't think he's going to get put in the Steve Nash category, although obviously he gets disrespected again. But even players in the league have said for years, like, Steve Nash became great when they changed the rules. Great player, not hating on Steve, but Steve Nash became great when they changed the rules. Truly great players are great in any era under any rule set. Mm-hmm. And I do think Jokic would be great under any era and any rule set. And like, I consider LeBron a pseudo big, so I'm not going to call Jokic the best passing big because LeBron's a top 4 passer ever, 4 or 5. Like it's up there, but his passing ability and his offensive toolbox, like when people talk about Kyrie as the best bag of maybe any guard ever, and that's like a fair conversation. I don't know if I say he has the best bag, but he's definitely in the conversation. But if we're talking about bags, Jokic has a whole closet full of Louis Vuitton. I don't think we've had it. I can't think of a big man who had a bag like that. People talk about like, well, Bill Walton is a passer. Okay, but Bill Walton couldn't go get you 40 and get the 15 assists. Even in his prime, Bill Walton wasn't that guy.
And that's the problem. The passing becomes a part of the bag, right? You don't know if I turn around and I'm already 7 feet or however tall damn Jokic is, but if I'm of that weight, of that height, and we're, and I'm playing a bruising style, I've seen Jokic so many times, man. Back up, turn, fade. You don't know if a shot or a pass is coming. Like, he makes it to where
he creates hesitancy in the defenders.
Yeah.
which
but
creates
everybody
those
on the
passing
floor.
lanes.
Therefore, it makes whoever the hell he's playing with, no matter how good or how talented they are, automatically better because he opens up shots and he can do it on so many different parts of the floor. But his favorite part on the floor, at least from my perspective, is right by the free throw line, right to where everything is completely fucking
elbow
open.
extended. He is the deadliest player in the league.
So, I mean, look, if you don't like the fact that he has 2 MVPs, put that on the NBA and make them change how it's set up. Listen, at the end of the day, no Jamal Murray, no Michael Porter Jr. I mean, shout out to Bones Highland coming off the bench, man. But I mean, you're out there with Austin Rivers. I mean, you had to bank on DeMarcus Cousins late coming in, who played pretty decent basketball
good for
down the
Boogie,
stretch.
but
they had,
very
good.
He ain't Boogie anymore. He's just Boog.
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of guys. Will Barton, and man, solid role players, but
not
for
the kind of players you would want on a contender.
No, but for that team to not be a bubble team, for them to straight out flat make the playoffs, I mean, you gotta under him playing statistically better than his last year, when some of those guys were healthy. Come on, man. Jokic is I'm with you. I think he will get overshadowed because his dominance when it comes down to the playoffs, the things that you need out of him and how you impact games, like I think that's when he starts to need his teammates more. Changes, defensive structure changes. I think that's when
not to cut you off, but like I think everybody really we've seen two players ever.
Yeah.
Like NBA history. 2 guys ever took bad teams, like with bad role players to the finals.
Yeah.
LeBron did it in 2007 and AI did it in 2000. And even AI is like you had the defensive player in the year in Mutombo.
Yeah.
The rest of that roster, they were not a great team. Like AI was transcendent that year, and he dragged them there, and he actually won game 1. And then Shaq woke up and the series was over. But like, I'm not going to kill Jokic because he didn't go further than he did without great teammates around him. Because literally every great player, like Michael got swept in the first round. People forget Michael lost in the first round a lot. Michael didn't start winning until all of the great teams of his era got old, hurt, or both. However, that coincided with Scottie coming into his own and them getting a great team around him, and then they won 6 straight. Was Michael less of a great player when they won 6 straight? No. He had a great team. Teams win championships. So I'm never going to be the guy that'll kill Jokic for the team performance stuff. Like I'll laugh at the people who are like, well, his defensive VORP was better than. Okay, watch the fucking game, you idiot. Like you're not allowed to talk basketball. Okay, please just stop.
I just what I struggle with Jokic in a playoff series. I just don't see. I don't feel he's a guy to where I can say, no matter who's on the floor, go win me this game. Just go out here and win me. I don't see that guy against playoff type competition personally. I
do, but because of the 2020 season.
Fair. So, I mean, I just see more of a really great enhancer who's also a hell of a player and who can be the most valuable player of a regular season. But when we're talking big men, I think I'm so much into what I love about Embiid and the way in which he can just dominate shit. I mean, fuck, man. Like James Harden,
it looks more intimidating when Embiid takes over a game. What Jokic does is more subtle, and it doesn't make you go, "Oh yeah, he's killing this game," and then you look up, he's got 42.
Yeah. It's still great. It's still good. I just look at like that Philly, that Philly team. Joel went through a lot, man. He went through a lot this year trying to figure out a way. No Ben, then Ben. Okay, then Seth Curry and then end up getting traded.
I still think Joel should have won the MVP, but I'm
not mad at it.
I'm not mad at it. Like Jokic was a deserving winner. Just like I thought LeBron was the MVP in 2011. Yes, I'm a LeBron fan, but like I thought LeBron was the I thought he was clearly the best player in the league. But I didn't have a problem with Derrick Rose winning it because Derrick Rose was so absurd. It was like, yeah, I ain't got a problem with
Yeah.
that. But here's the last thing I want to say on Jokic because you brought up the playoffs thing. So I remember like people poo-poo the bubble championship, and I get all that. And this isn't about LeBron. But what people don't really appreciate is the bubble environment from a health, from a mental, from a physical drains aspect is the hardest playoff run of any year in NBA history. And what people forget is during that playoff run, when Jokic faced the Lakers, who were built big and built correctly around LeBron and AD that year, Jokic was dominating major parts of that series. The Lakers, like people are like, oh yeah, AD got him. No, Jokic was killing AD. The Lakers' strategy was throughout that series, and it was driving Jokic nuts, but it worked. They foul hunted. They got him off the floor and then went on big runs when he wasn't on the floor. But if you actually go back and watch those Western Conference finals, they weren't winning the Jokic minutes. Jokic was against LeBron, top 2, 3, depending on how you want to do things. Like there's 3 guys in that conversation. People think there's 2, there's 3. And that's it. That's the conversation of the greatest player that's ever played in the game. Like, I do think Jokic can play like any player. You put the right teammates around him. Like, he needs a legitimate guard who can score, especially like in clutch time, because like you do need guys who can just instant bucket. And very few big men have that. I don't think Embiid has that. Even as great as he is, like you need a guard who can do that, and you need some wings that can defend. Which I don't know why they gave Michael all that money when he can't do that, but that's not here nor there. Maybe he's trade bait. We'll see. But yeah, him saying I got your back, big dog, is kind of ironic. But anyway, yeah, I went there. But like I actually do I have more faith in Jokic in the playoffs after watching that run so closely and going, this guy's giving them the business, and this is the one team built to like honestly, the Lakers won that series because Dwight got in Jokic's head and was pissing him off and got Jokic to pick up a bunch of dumb fouls. And then like the last game, LeBron was just like, yeah, I'm tired of this. The series is over, which great players do. Right. But like the ability to get Jokic in foul trouble is why they won that series. He was killing them. So I actually am pretty confident if you put the right team around him, Jokic could be a real problem in the playoffs.
You know, I don't. I agree with it. I just think I'm very curious to what that right fit is going to be. Yep. And I guess I feel like Embiid is a lot more easier in my mind to build around because he is the like watching him like in the Toronto series, for example, to where they just at one point, the whole fucking team just swarms around them, right? Now, granted, they're out there running the starting lineup where no one's taller than 6'8", but at that point, it just becomes easier, right? Shooters, we got put enough shooters. Give me 1 or 2 guys that can attack closeouts, and whether it's find him or be able to create for themselves, you should be able to make something happen. You should be able to win with that. I feel like that's a little bit easier. I think Jokic he definitely needs someone else to be able to create their own consistently. I think all teams from a perspective do, but I think he needs it more than Embiid, which is why MPJ and Jamal got to figure it out.
I'll agree with that. I totally get where you're coming from. I'll agree with that. I'll say one last thing, and this is going to be crazy, but it comes with the caveat of you have to flood the rest of the roster with a lot of really high level defensive, like wing type players.
That too.
But the guy that I actually think just game wise, if you paired him with Jokic and promised health, which is always the caveat, I don't know if anybody could do anything about it, is actually Kyrie.
Interesting.
Because if you think about Kyrie as the lead guard, the problem with Kyrie is he can pass, but he's too much Kobe. And he's not a great passer when he does decide he wants to pass. Jokic, if Jokic is running the offense, it bends the defense to where Kyrie is basically always in a one-on-one situation
to get the shots that he wants.
Jokic is an elite passer, and it's basically Kyrie, go get buckets whenever you want. If you shift to him, Jokic can do his thing, and you just surround him with the athletic wings. Like, hypothetical, I'm just, playing with rosters and doing NBA 2K trades. But if I was going to take a skill set of any player in the league and going to pair it with Jokic and go, how am I going to build a champion around Jokic? I'm looking at a guy like Kyrie or Dame. Like, you need an instant bucket type guard who is an elite ISO player. Because Jokic on the strong side is scary. Jokic on the weak side is scary. But Jokic strong side with an elite ISO scorer on the weak side is terrifying.
It breaks, which is why Jamal Murray
is the same reason why Steph Curry plus Klay Thompson, terrifying. Steph Curry plus Klay Thompson plus Draymond at the elbows playing passer breaks defenses because their movement, they're constantly churning, and all he has to do is make a read and go, he's going to be open, 3. He's going to be open, 3. And then the part people always forget, Steph and Klay will attack in the mid-range and will attack the basket. So that's how they break. Like, it's all about breaking defenses. Sports to me is geometry. How do you control the field of play? And you do it by maximizing your skill set and forcing the other team to make bad decisions. And the truly great teams make it go, it doesn't matter what decision you make, we have a better one. But those are the all-timers. But just in general, it's basketball, football, to a certain degree baseball, but baseball really is the true one-on-one game, even though it's a team sport. But basketball and football in particular, hockey, soccer, like, it's geometry. It's all about controlling the field of play. And there's a dozen different ways to do it. And we just spent an hour talking about one of, like, it worked in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and 90s, and it still works today. A dominant player who's tall, athletic, and skilled, who works near the basket, has a huge impact on the game. The same way it did today as it did 50 years ago. The question is, do you have talented guys that are that big that can move? And when you do, the big man ain't dead. It was just hibernating.
Yeah. And I think mentality's in that elk matter as well, man. You have to, I mean, some guys just grow big, man. They're big their whole life, so with that comes a sense of you become what you're used to. You're the biggest kid on the block. You're always the biggest kid on your team. You're used to, there's either you either become a bully or you don't. Yeah.
Or AD?
You either become a bully or you don't. Or that guy that AD who gets a growth spurt late, you can't develop a mentality to be a big at that point.
I mean, you can, but are you wired that way?
Yeah.
Because were you wired that way as a guard? Like, I'm 5'10". I ain't never out-jumped anybody, but
good idea. Yeah.
I used to box out guys into the stands.
Yeah.
I got a guy kicked out of a game one time for doing it. He got pissed off and swung at me, and he got kicked out. Like, I don't care. I'm getting this fucking rebound, and if I'm not getting it, your ass is going that way. Like, you can have that pit bull mentality at any size, but when you're a giant human and you have that pit bull mentality, hey, there's just nothing like a dominant big man, man. I'm so glad we're about to watch another great era of big men, and if Evan Mobley and Zion stay healthy, there's going to be 5 to 10 teams in the league that are going to have a guy 6'10" or above every single night that they go, y'all have no answer for this at all. And Utah gave Rudy Gobert $200 million.
Unfortunately, because they had to, but that's a different.
And he gave everybody there COVID.
Rudy, man.
Baguette Roy Hibbert.
It's
actually, I'd rather have Roy Hibbert, but
don't be disrespectful. Don't be that disrespectful.
Roy knew his role.
Roy did. I don't know. Man, it's Rudy. We could because we could this will extend this conversation. I don't have the time. I don't have the time.
You see what I'm doing? I'm poking your head.
Yeah, no, man. All right. Oh man.
All right. right. Well, I appreciate you for coming on, man. We're gonna wrap that up, everybody. So we appreciate you guys for listening. If you enjoy these types of conversations, feel free to throw topics into the into the comments section. Chris and I done recorded a billion shows together before. The NBA offseason, the NFL offseason, there's lots of free time going around. So we hope you guys enjoyed the show. Like, comment, subscribe if you feel like it. And as always, huge thanks to my brother over here for coming out and having a good time and talking sports. We'll talk to
Appreciate
you
you,
guys
brother,
next
man.
time.